Commander Vrak 9 stared at the holographic display, his 4 eyes blinking in what could only be described as cosmic confusion. The data streams flickered before him, each one more ridiculous than the last. How had the Galactic Council's most sophisticated military campaign gone so spectacularly wrong? "Sir," squeaked Lieutenant Zylph, her tentacles trembling as she approached the command platform. "The human fleet, they're still coming." "Still coming?" Vrak 9's mandibles clicked in irritation. "We destroyed half their planet's infrastructure. We took their precious 4-legged companions. What more could they possibly want?" The lieutenant's chromatophores shifted to a sickly yellow-green. "Revenge, sir. Apparently, lots of revenge. 3 cycles ago, this whole mess had seemed so simple. The hegemony needed test subjects for their new bio-enhancement program, and Earth's canines possessed the perfect genetic markers. Quick raid, grab a few million specimens, done. Easy credits. The humans were barely space-capable. What could go wrong? Everything, as it turned out." "Show me the tactical readout again," Vrak 9 commanded, his voice carrying the weight of someone who was beginning to suspect the universe had a sense of humor. The hologram shifted, displaying the incoming human armada. Vrak 9's primary stomach lurched. Where there had been 50 ships a cycle ago, now there were 500. Where there had been basic plasma cannons, now there were weapons that defied 3 laws of physics and 2 principles of common sense. "How are they building ships that fast?" he muttered, watching the display update in real time. "Our intelligence said they needed years to construct a single cruiser." "About that, sir." Zylph's voice grew even squeakier. "Our intelligence might have been slightly inaccurate." "Slightly?" Vrak 9's eye stalks swiveled toward her with predatory focus. "Well, sir, it turns out that when humans get really, really angry, they tend to, well..." She gestured helplessly at the display. "They do this." The tactical screen showed something that shouldn't have been possible. Human shipyards that had been producing civilian transports last cycle were now churning out warships like a court-hack breeding factory. Massive industrial complexes were sprouting from nothing, powered by what their scanners insisted was pure spite and caffeine. "Sir." Another voice called from across the command deck. "Communication from the human fleet." "Put it through," Vrak 9 sighed, wondering if his military academy training had covered dealing with irrationally motivated primitives. It hadn't. The main screen flickered, revealing a human female with short auburn hair and eyes that seemed to burn with the fire of 1,000 suns. Her uniform bore the insignia of what their databases identified as Admiral, though her expression suggested something closer to barely restrained apocalypse. "This is Admiral Rebecca Kane of the United Earth Defense Force," she said, her voice carrying the kind of calm that preceded hurricanes. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." Vrak 9 straightened his carapace. "Admiral Kane, I am Commander Vrak 9 of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet. Your primitive vessels are no match for our advanced technology. I suggest you withdraw before. Did you just call us primitive?" Kane's eyebrow arched in a way that made Vrak 9's secondary heart skip a beat. "Well, yes. Your species has barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Your weapons are crude, your shields are basic, and your military doctrine is, hold that thought." Kane turned to someone off-screen. "Major Torres, what's our current missile count?" A voice responded from beyond the transmission range, 17 million and counting, ma'am. The factory ships are working overtime." Kane turned back to the screen with a smile that could have frozen plasma. 17 million missiles, Commander. All of them pointed at your fleet. All of them carrying warheads that are primitive scientists designed specifically for your ship hulls. Vrak 9's mandibles began clicking involuntarily. That's impossible. You can't have manufactured, Commander," Kane interrupted. "Let me explain something about human nature. We're a species that domesticated wolves 30,000 years ago. We turned apex predators into family members. We bred them to herd our livestock, guard our children, and comfort our elderly. We created hundreds of breeds, each one perfect for its purpose. The transmission seemed to grow colder. And you took them. They're just animals. Vrak, 9 protested, though something in Kane's expression made him wish he'd kept his mouth shut. Just animals? Kane leaned forward. Commander, meet someone. The screen split, showing a human child no more than 8 local years old. She had dark hair and pigtails and was clutching a stuffed toy that looked remarkably like a canine. This is Emma Rodriguez, Kane said quietly. Tell the commander about Buster, Emma. The child looked directly at Vrak, 9 with eyes that held far too much pain for someone so young. Buster was my best friend. He slept in my bed every night and helped me with my nightmares. He was brown and white and he always knew when I was sad. Her voice cracked. The monsters took him away. The transmission returned to Kane alone. That little girl, Commander, represents about 4 billion humans who've lost their best friends. Their family members. Their companions who never judged them, never left them, and loved them unconditionally. Vrak, 9 felt something he'd never experienced before. Was this what humans called, oh no? But here's what's really interesting, Kane continued, her voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. While you were congratulating yourselves on raiding a primitive world, we've been busy. Tell me, Commander, have you ever heard of human military innovation during wartime? Your species has no significant military history, Vrak, 9 managed to say, though his confidence was evaporating faster than water in a solar flare. Kane laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. No significant military history? Commander, we're a species that figured out how to split atoms just so we could use them as weapons. We've fought wars that killed millions of our own kind over resources, territory, and ideology. We've turned warfare into an art form. The tactical display updated again. The human fleet had doubled in size while they'd been talking. But this time, Kane continued, we're not fighting each other. This time, every human on Earth agrees on something. Every nation, every culture, every political faction has united behind a single cause. Her smile returned, somehow even more unsettling than before. Getting our dogs back. You're bluffing, Vrak, 9 said, though he was beginning to suspect he was very, very wrong. Major Torres, Kane called again. Show the commander what we've been working on. The transmission shifted to show what could only be described as organized chaos. Massive shipyards stretched across Earth's orbital space, with humans swarming over construction frames like angry insects. But these weren't the slow, methodical construction processes the hegemony used. This was something else entirely. Our economists estimate we've increased our industrial output by 4,000% in the last 3 cycles, Kane's voice narrated. Turns out, when you threaten something humans care about, we get very, very focused. Vrak, 9 watched in growing horror as the display showed ships being assembled in hours instead of months. Weapon systems that violated several engineering principles were being mounted on hulls that shouldn't have been able to support them. It was impossible, impractical, and completely insane that IT was also working. You see, Commander, Kane reappeared on screen, you made a fundamental error in your assessment of our species. You saw our peaceful nature and assumed we were weak. You saw our love for our animals and assumed it was sentiment. You saw our relatively recent entry into space and assumed we were helpless. She paused, letting that sink in. What you failed to understand is that humans don't just love our dogs. We made them family. And there is absolutely nothing, that humans won't do for family. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Vrak, 9 staring at a blank screen while klaxons began wailing throughout his ship. Sir! Lieutenant ZYLPH called out, her voice reaching frequencies that shouldn't have been possible for her species. Long-range scanners are detecting something new. What now? Vrak 9's voice carried the resignation of someone who was beginning to understand just how badly he'd miscalculated. The humans, they're not just bringing their military fleet, sir. Then what are they bringing? ZYLPH's chromatophores shifted through several colors before settling on a shade that roughly translated to, "We're all going to die." Everything, sir. They're bringing everything. Everything? Commander Vrak 9 repeated, his voice cracking like a molting shell. Define everything. Lieutenant ZYLPH's tentacles were now doing something that could only be described as nervous jazz hands. Well, sir, our sensors are picking up massive cargo vessels, construction ships, mining barges, agricultural transports, passenger liners, research vessels, and... She paused, consulting her scanner readout, what appears to be several 100,000 civilian craft that have been hastily converted into weapons platforms. Civilian craft? Vrak 9's mandibles clicked so rapidly they sounded like artillery fire. They're bringing cargo haulers to a military engagement? Sir, these humans appear to have weaponized their garbage trucks. The command deck fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and what sounded suspiciously like someone's nervous stomach growling. Vrak 9 stared at the tactical display, watching as the impossible became the inevitable. Communications, he barked, get me high command. Now. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing Supreme Admiral Clath 5, whose expression suggested he'd been having a wonderful day right up until this moment. Vrak 9, Clath 5's voice carried the authority of someone who commanded 12-star systems and the patience of someone who was rapidly running out of both. Please tell me you have good news about this simple livestock acquisition mission. Well, sir, the good news is that we successfully acquired the specimens. And the bad news? The bad news is that the humans have declared what they call total war, and are currently approaching our position with what our scanners indicate is their entire civilization. Clath 5's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sure sign of impending volcanic fury. Their entire civilization? 4 animals? Before Vrak 9 could respond, every screen on the command deck lit up with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared belonged to a human male with graying hair and the kind of steady gaze that suggested he'd seen things that would make most species reconsider their life choices. Attention hegemony forces, the human said, his voice carrying the weight of authority and the promise of consequences. This is President Marcus Webb of the United Earth Government. I'm here to discuss terms. Terms? Clath 5 interjected, his image splitting the screen. You're in no position to dictate terms, human. We possess superior technology, superior numbers, and superior, with respect, Supreme Admiral, Webb interrupted, consulting what appeared to be a data pad, you possess 17 battle cruisers, 236 escort vessels, and approximately 40,000 crew members. We, on the other hand, have just entered your local space with 12 million ships and roughly 3 billion very motivated humans. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as a luxury product on worlds where quiet was rare. 12 million? Clath 5's voice had climbed several octaves. That's impossible. No species can field that many vessels. You're absolutely right, Webb agreed cheerfully. No military can field that many vessels. But we're not just a military, Admiral. We're an entire species that has temporarily set aside every other priority to address this one issue. The tactical display updated in real time, showing the approaching human fleet spreading across space like a metallic plague. Ships of every conceivable design and purpose stretched beyond the horizon of the scanner's range. You see, Webb continued, when word got out about what you'd done, something remarkable happened. Our cargo pilots volunteered their haulers. Our miners brought their extraction vessels. Our colonists turned their transport ships around mid-journey. Our scientists loaded their research platforms with weapons they'd invented during the trip here. Webb's expression grew more serious. Even our children contributed. 10-year-olds donated their allowances to buy ammunition. Teenagers learned to operate weapon systems in their spare time. Grandparents came out of retirement to crew support vessels. Lieutenant ZYLPH made a sound that roughly translated to, "Oh dear sweet cosmic void, we're all doomed." But here's what's really interesting, Webb continued, clearly enjoying himself now. In the process of mobilizing to get our dogs back, we've accidentally discovered something fascinating about human industrial capacity. Which is? Vrak 9 asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know. It turns out that when properly motivated, humans can accomplish things that our own scientists said were theoretically impossible. We've been building ships faster than our computers can register them. We've been developing weapons that shouldn't work but do anyway. We've been innovating solutions to problems we didn't even know we had. The screen split again, showing various human operations in progress. Massive construction yards where ships were being assembled by what appeared to be controlled chaos. Weapons laboratories where humans were working with the kind of frantic energy usually reserved for natural disasters. Command centers where the coordination of millions of vessels was being managed by people who looked like they'd learned logistics from a fever dream. How? Clath 5 whispered. How is any of this possible? Simple, Webb replied. You took our dogs. They're just domesticated animals. Vrak 9 protested. They serve no strategic purpose. They contribute nothing to your civilization's development. The human president's expression shifted, and for the first time in the conversation, he looked genuinely angry. Commander, let me explain something about the relationship between humans and dogs. 30,000 years ago, our ancestors were just another species of ambitious primates trying to survive on a hostile world. Then something extraordinary happened. Webb leaned forward, his voice taking on the tone of someone delivering a history lesson that would be remembered. We formed a partnership with wolves. Not domestication in the traditional sense, but a genuine alliance. We shared our fire, our food, our homes. They shared their senses, their loyalty, their protection. Together, we became something neither species could have achieved alone. The screen showed images of humans and dogs throughout history, ancient hunters working alongside wolves, farmers guarded by loyal companions, soldiers comforted by faithful friends, children growing up with furry siblings. Dogs didn't just become our pets, Admiral. They became our partners in building civilization. They helped us hunt, they guarded our settlements, they warned us of dangers. When we developed agriculture, they protected our crops. When we built cities, they kept us safe. When we reached for the stars, they came with us. Webb's voice grew quieter, but somehow more intense. Every major human achievement over the past 30 millennia has been accomplished with dogs by our side. They've been our companions, our workers, our friends, our family members, and our teachers in the art of unconditional love. So when you took them, Webb continued, you didn't just steal animals. You stole partners who've been with us since before we were truly human. You stole family members who've shared our homes for longer than most species have existed. You stole the living symbols of our capacity for love, loyalty, and cooperation. The tactical display showed the human fleet arranging itself into formations that seemed to violate several principles of naval strategy while somehow making perfect sense. And now, Webb concluded, you're about to experience what humans are capable of when we apply that same capacity for love, loyalty, and cooperation to the art of war. Supreme Admiral Clath 5 cleared his throat, a sound like grinding metal. President Webb, surely we can reach some accommodation. We could return your animals and compensate you for any inconvenience. Oh, you're definitely returning our dogs, Webb interrupted. But I'm afraid compensation isn't going to be quite that simple. What do you mean? Webb smiled, and it was possibly the most terrifying expression Vrak 9 had ever seen. Well, you see, while we were mobilizing our entire civilization to come get our dogs back, we couldn't help but notice some things about your hegemony. Your slave labor operations, for instance. Your habit of strip mining inhabited worlds. Your tendency to abduct sentient beings for experimentation. The screen split to show various human intelligence reports, each one documenting hegemony crimes across the galaxy. So we've decided that as long as we're out here with 12 million ships and 3 billion motivated humans, we might as well tidy up the neighborhood a bit. Clath 5's chromatophores shifted to a color that didn't exist in most species' vocabulary. You can't be serious. You're talking about taking on the entire hegemony over domestic animals. Supreme Admiral, Webb's voice carried the patience of someone explaining something to a small child. You still don't understand. We're not taking on the hegemony over domestic animals. We're taking on the hegemony because that's apparently what it takes to get our family back. The transmission ended, leaving the command deck in the kind of silence usually reserved for funerals and tax audits. Sir, Lieutenant ZYLPH said quietly, incoming message from the human fleet. Put it through, VRAC, 9 sighed, suspecting this day was about to get even worse. The screen flickered, showing Admiral Kane again. This time, she was standing in what appeared to be a cargo bay filled with humans in various uniforms, all of them checking weapons that looked like they'd been designed by particularly violent artists. Commander VRAC, 9, Kane said, you have 1 hour to return every single dog you took from Earth. Unharmed. Well-fed. With their favorite toys. And if we refuse? Kane's smile could have powered a small star. Then you'll discover what happens when 3 billion humans stop being polite and start being creative. The transmission ended, and VRAC, 9 found himself staring at a countdown timer that had appeared on his main screen. 59 minutes and counting. Sir, ZYLPH whispered, what are we going to do? VRAC, 9 looked at the tactical display, showing 12 million human ships arranged in patterns that somehow suggested both overwhelming force and barely contained enthusiasm. He looked at his own fleet, 17 battle cruisers that suddenly seemed very small and very alone. Lieutenant, he said quietly, open a channel to the cargo bays. Tell them to prepare the specimens for immediate return. Sir? And ZYLPH? Yes, sir. Next time someone suggests we raid a world for their domestic animals, remind me to ask what those animals mean to them first. Yes, sir. As the countdown continued, Commander VRAC, 9 couldn't help but wonder if there was a lesson in all of this. Something about the dangers of underestimating species based on their apparent weaknesses. Something about the power of love to motivate impossible achievements. Something about the folly of taking things that don't belong to you, but mostly, he was just hoping that humans were as forgiving as their dogs were loyal. He was about to find out.